1898. Governor Cardew offers £100 for an African chief's capture. The chief's response? £500 for the governor. That chief's name was Bai Bureh, nicknamed Kebalai, the one who doesn't tire of war. And his face is on Sierra Leone's currency today because of what happened next. When Governor Cardew put that £100 bounty on Bai Bureh's head during the Hut Tax War, Bai Bureh reciprocated with £500 for the governor's capture. Historical records confirm this actually happened. The counter-bounty was publicly announced throughout Sierra Leone. But here's what makes this remarkable. Bai Bureh wasn't just some village chief making empty threats. This was a man who had spent decades becoming the most feared warrior in northern Sierra Leone. He had earned his nickname Kebalai, meaning one who doesn't tire of war, by defeating the Susu invasion from French Guinea and uniting northern tribes under his command. When he put that price on Governor Cardew's head, everyone knew he had the resources and the will to back it up. To understand why this bounty exchange terrified the British, you need to know who Bai Bureh actually was. Born in 1840, he was sent as a young man to train as a warrior in the village of Gabendembu. He proved so formidable that he earned the name Kebalai, the one who never tires of fighting. By the 1860s and 1870s, Bai Bureh had become the top warrior of Port Loko and all of northern Sierra Leone. In 1882, when the Susu people invaded from French Guinea, Bai Bureh's forces didn't just repel them, they chased them back across the border and returned the conquered land to local people. After winning several major wars, his reputation spread throughout the region. In 1886, he was crowned Chief of Northern Sierra Leone, not through birthright, but through proven military excellence. This was the man now offering £500 for a British governor's head. The confrontation began in 1893 when the colonial government instituted a hut tax. Every household had to pay 5 shillings annually in money, grain, stock, or labour. Bai Bureh's position was simple. Sierra Leoneans had no duty to pay taxes to foreigners. He wanted all British to return to Britain and let Sierra Leoneans solve their own problems. After refusing to pay taxes on several occasions, the colonial government issued a warrant for his arrest. That's when Governor Cardew offered the £100 bounty. Bai Bureh's £500 counteroffer wasn't just defiance, it was strategic psychology. He had transformed a British intimidation tactic into a declaration of superior resources and confidence. In 1898, Bai Bureh declared war on the British in Sierra Leone. What became known as the Hut Tax War was about to begin. Bai Bureh's forces came from Temne and Loko villages under his command, but fighters also arrived from Limimba, Kisi, and Kuranko villages to support him. His tactical approach was devastatingly effective. By February 19, 1898, Bai Bureh's forces had completely severed communication lines between Freetown and Port Loko. They blocked roads and rivers, isolating the colonial capital. For months, British forces, with their formal military training and modern weapons, couldn't defeat this warrior who had learned strategy through decades of actual combat. The colonial government found themselves facing an enemy who knew every path, every river, every hiding place in the terrain. Despite their arrest warrant and superior firepower, they simply couldn't capture Bai Bureh or break his resistance. The conflict resulted in hundreds of casualties on both sides, but Bai Bureh maintained his advantage for most of the war. On November 11, 1898, Bai Bureh finally surrendered, not because he was defeated, but because continued fighting would bring more suffering to his people. He was tracked down by a West African regiment patrol in swampy countryside near Port Loko. Even then, his warriors fought before the surrender was complete. When Bai Bureh was brought to Freetown, crowds gathered around his quarters day and night just to see him. The colonial government treated him as a political prisoner with limited freedom, a sign of the respect his resistance had earned. The fact that Bai Bureh wasn't executed after capture led historians to believe this was due to British admiration for his military prowess. A warrior who had resisted the empire for nearly a year using guerrilla tactics that would later influence resistance movements worldwide. Bai Bureh was exiled to the Gold Coast, modern Ghana, along with other chiefs who had joined the resistance. While his fellow exiles died in captivity, Bai Bureh survived. In 1905, 7 years after putting a £500 bounty on Governor Cardew's head, Bai Bureh was brought back to Sierra Leone and reinstated as chief of Kase. The British colonial government had not only failed to break him, they eventually restored his traditional authority. He served as chief until his death in 1908. Today, Bai Bureh appears on Sierra Leonean currency, and a large statue of him stands in central Freetown. A professional football club, the Bai Bureh Warriors, carries his name. The man who once had a price on his head is now literally the face of his nation's money. The significance of Bai Bureh's story isn't just the famous bounty exchange. It's that a man without formal military training resisted British forces for nearly a year using tactics that would later be studied by guerrilla movements worldwide. That £500 bounty represents something deeper. The moment an African leader demonstrated he could compete with colonial authority on equal terms and ultimately outlast it. Subscribe for more stories of African resistance and let me know. What other leaders challenged colonial powers in ways that still inspire today? Thanks for watching.